Crown of Thorns and Desire. Previous episodes are available on playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 7. We'll have a car tomorrow, so you don't have to ride your bike. He specifically arranged a car to take us to campus. He really treasures you. Well, sort of. Kanye propped her chin on her hand, looking a bit bored. I don't really like the feeling of being followed everywhere. I promise, this one is even better. If you want it, I'll bring it to you next time. Annabelle smiled mysteriously, then composed her expression a bit more seriously. Kanye, I want to ask you a question. What do you think love is? Love should be like two people entwined, understanding each other deeply, pledging their lives to one another, moving people. As Kanye spoke, she sighed lightly again. In novels, it's always so beautiful. Perhaps love in reality should be like the articles written by your talented friend, starting with passionate love, but over time, the red roses fade and become lonely, and the white roses turn mundane and boring. Don't bring others into it. I'm asking about you. Love. I don't know. Does this count as love? She lowered her dark eyes, her voice getting softer. Then how did he court you? Kanye's eyes looked into the white porcelain cup with a gold rim, gently stirring with a small spoon. The petals and fruit tea floated leisurely, slowly sinking to the bottom of the water. His way of courting is very romantic and unique, making it irresistible. You know, he is more handsome and affectionate than any prince. He would play the piano for you under the night sky, he would kneel at your feet, gazing deeply into your eyes, telling you that you are his princess, his goddess, his angel. He would travel 10 hours on the road for a week just to see you for a moment, say good night, and then leave. There's so much more, really so much. Her dark brows subtly trembled, and her rose-colored lips quivered as if she was holding back, not continuing to speak. How romantic! Annabelle seemed unaware of her emotional fluctuations, glancing at her slightly flushed face and softly laughing. This was the first time Kanye stepped into the campus of this university. The vast lawns, the classical architecture, everything was so tranquil. A black Mercedes sedan glided along the tree-lined path, bringing them to the entrance of a small independent building. Kanye followed Annabelle into the women's changing room on the second floor, changing into the blue sports shirt that Annabelle had bought for her. Annabelle also changed into a matching red outfit, placing her hands on her hips and sizing her up. Kanye, your figure is really great, your skin is so smooth and fair, you look like a flawless pearl, perfect enough to make men fantasize and women jealous. Is that so? Kanye gently pressed her hand against the medical tape on her chest. Fortunately, she had prepared the tape in advance, covering the tattoos on her chest and back. However, the tape felt a bit uncomfortable, making her sticky and her skin slightly itchy. Hey? What's that on your chest? Why do you have a bandage on? Oh, there's one on your back too. Annabelle exclaimed as if she had discovered a new continent, pointing at her. It's nothing. I just caught a chill while sleeping, and my shoulder hurts a bit, Kanye replied with a wry smile, rotating her arm. Next time, I'll get you some real ointment. That medical tape is useless. Girls, come to the mirror, everyone line up in 3 rows. A tall blonde coach clapped her hands, signaling everyone to gather. The girls who had been scattered around the gymnastics room came together. This was Kanye's first time participating in such an activity. The girls were all full of energy, giving her the illusion that she was with her classmates from the church school, with only her and Annabelle being the 2 black-haired Eastern girls among them. Your posture is really good. Which college are you from? I haven't seen you before. The coach walked up to Kanye and asked with a smile. She is my friend, named Gianna, who came here because she admires your wonderful teaching. She used to dance ballet. While Kanye was still in a daze, Annabelle answered the coach's question for her. That's very fortunate. You used to dance ballet? Would you like to perform a piece for everyone? The coach suggested with a smile. Annabelle. I can't. Kanye clearly did not expect Annabelle to suddenly mention this, feeling a bit shy and hesitant. I haven't practiced in a long time. It's okay, just dance a couple of steps, Annabelle continued to encourage her. I really want to see you dance. The sincere gazes from everyone made it hard for Kanye to refuse. Then I'll perform a solo from Swan Lake, but without ballet shoes. I don't know if I can stand properly. Kanye gently raised her long arms, striking a swan-like pose, and began her dance performance. As she danced, she gradually realized that although she hadn't practiced in a long time, she could still dance. The girls and the coach watched intently as this Eastern girl performed ballet. Her movements were so light, her posture so graceful. Unlike the common dancers, she was more petite and delicate, exuding a unique charm. Kanye, go for it. You're dancing so well. Annabelle clapped and cheered. Hearing her friend's untimely praise, Kanye chuckled inwardly and continued dancing until she prepared to finish the piece with a series of 5 consecutive 360-degree turns. The beginning went smoothly, but as she entered the second turn, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her right ankle, and then her feet seemed to lose control. Ah! She cried out as she slid to the ground. The wooden floor was very slippery, and her body glided like a plane that had been shot down, skidding to the other side of the classroom, crashing into the wall. I'm fine, she said, her legs spread apart as she crawled on the floor, holding her slightly aching ankle with her hands. Kanye, how are you? Let's go to the infirmary. Annabelle rushed to her side. Fortunately, she had practiced dance and was quite flexible. If it had been someone else in such a split position, the consequences would have been unimaginable. No, it's okay. I just need to rest a bit, she said as she stood up with Annabelle's help, hopping on one foot to a chair, trying to move her ankle. It's not a sprain, just a twist. I'll be fine after resting a bit. You go back to practice. I'll stay here with you. Annabelle sat down beside her. Then you can take a break with her. The coach clapped her hands and said, "Girls, let's continue. Everyone, hold on to the bar and do some basic ballet movements." The girls practiced under the coach's guidance, struggling a bit. Kanye stared blankly at these girls of various heights and shapes. Although she couldn't perform the 32 whip turns in the Black Swan duet as perfectly as the Soviet teacher at the church school, such simple turns should be manageable. Suddenly, her mood turned gloomy. Annabelle noticed her emotions and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault for suggesting you dance. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have fallen. It's not your fault. My ankle was previously sprained and hasn't fully healed. It seems. I really can't dance," she said softly, lowering her head. "It won't be like that, it won't." Annabelle hurriedly grasped her hand, but as soon as she touched Kanye's cold fingers, Kanye instinctively pulled her hand back. "How did your ankle get injured?" Annabelle asked with concern, noticing Kanye rubbing the tape on her chest, seemingly annoyed by its stickiness, and rolling up a small corner. On her fair chest, there seemed to be some black patterns, and her mood appeared even lower, her voice becoming hoarse. "Annabelle, I can't control it." "What?" Annabelle was taken aback by her sudden words. "Love, love. Love is a wild horse that has broken free, racing towards a cliff, and I am powerless to stop it. It is a bright red rose blooming on blood, and when you pick it, you will inevitably be pierced by its sharp thorns, leaving you wounded all over. Why do you say that all of a sudden?" Annabelle looked at her, even more puzzled. Kanye raised her head, gazing at her, tears shimmering in her dark eyes. "This is what I've experienced, love." Annabelle looked back at her, only to hear her continue, "His appearance is handsome and elegant, captivating, but his heart is dark and unfathomable. I can never forget how he forced me to wear a pair of crystal shoes and dragged me across the lawn when my ankle was already sprained, and I couldn't stand or walk at all." Annabelle finally understood something from her fragmented words and tried to comfort her. "The way he hurt you might be out of pride and self-esteem. They are all like that. But he killed for me. My partner, Dr. Harrison, died under his gunfire. And, an innocent boy." As Kanye thought of this, her emotions surged rapidly. Yes, in this crazy world, people have become crazy. In fact, he also assaulted me, not just once. I try not to think about it, and sometimes I don't know whether I should forgive him. I might as well take revenge by killing him with his gun while he sleeps, but you know? When he sleeps, he looks like an angel. Since you don't agree with his ways, why do you do this to yourself?" Annabelle finally couldn't help but retort. Kanye was taken aback by her question, blinking her dark eyes frequently as if considering how to respond. She knew her thoughts were chaotic. After a long pause, she lowered her gaze to Annabelle's bright black eyes and could only continue to pour out her innermost thoughts. I know he loves me, a deep and crazy love. He takes my hand to touch the deepest part of his heart, where there is a flat and soft place. He has an unknown past, a very tragic childhood that evokes pity. I can understand why he has become this way. Sometimes, I feel like my heart is a sponge, absorbing something filthy, and then wringing it out, draining the water, she said, you know. He has many medals, all kinds, dazzling, medals. Philip has many too, but he only wears one, the double-sword silver oak leaf. He treasures that more than life itself. It was awarded to him when he won the Nobel Prize, Annabelle said with a smile, her tone calm, but Kanye could still sense an undercurrent of emotion beneath that calmness, though she didn't let it show too much. Seeing that she had fallen silent, Kanye took over her words. The Nobel Prize? I didn't expect Philip to be so talented. He also has a very special medal, the Olympic medal. He is an equestrian, a gold medalist. I've seen one of his competition events, the dressage. The Black Knight of Atlantis, Annabelle said with a bright smile, as if deliberately raising her tone. How do you know? Kanye looked at her friend in surprise. Who doesn't know? Even the women of the entire empire are crazy for him, but only you have the fortune to see that moving performance, Annabelle said while sizing her up. Kanye's eyes sparkled with a captivating glimmer, and even the tears at the corners of her eyes seemed as sentimental as morning dew on rose petals by the lake. She leaned down, showing a somewhat shy demeanor, massaging her ankle, and said softly, he once said that love is an uncontrollable desire and impulse from the heart, sweet yet mixed with pain. When it hits me like a storm, I have no strength to resist. I don't know if this is called love, my dear Lin Mei, you are so in love that you don't even know where you are. Annabelle was almost exasperated, rolling her eyes at her. Does your ankle still hurt? Much better, Kanye stuck out her tongue at her playfully. Actually, it's not that painful. In the afternoon, she accompanied Annabelle to a fitness class. Perhaps due to not exercising for too long, her limbs were sore, and she fell asleep drowsily on the bed. Suddenly, the ringing of the phone startled her awake. She picked up the receiver, and his voice came through. Baby, did you have a good day? I went to a fitness group with Annabelle this afternoon. She turned over, lying on her stomach. Mr. 12, why are you calling me at this time? Don't you want to hear my voice? Then I'll hang up. No, don't hang up, she pouted softly. I was just asking why you called now. He seemed to answer her question indirectly. It's raining heavily here. Did you hear? Thunder and lightning outside the window, and 2 panes of glass in my office were shattered by the wind, but they've already been fixed. It's a bit overcast here too, but it hasn't rained, Kanye replied. She could hear the sound of rain pattering on the other end of the line, occasionally accompanied by a distant rumble of thunder. She wanted to say that if it was raining too heavily, he shouldn't come back, the roads would be muddy and driving would be too dangerous. But he continued, given this weather, I can't say for sure whether the rain will stop by tomorrow afternoon. Oh, she replied softly, suddenly feeling a bit down, as if her mood had dropped to the bottom. So I'm leaving tomorrow noon, but I can't estimate the travel time. If I arrive too late, you don't have to wait for me, do you mean you still have to come back? Then be careful on the road. I'll have my driver drive. I can't stand driving myself anymore. It's a 10-hour round trip. You know I've been staring blankly at my desk all week, unable to concentrate. During lunch, I just sit there and fall asleep. Who told you to suffer? Why not call the driver? He paused for a moment before saying, I'm afraid he'll laugh at me. Baby, that guy usually keeps quiet, but he knows everything inside. Kanye felt a sense of pride in teasing him in her heart. It was ridiculous, he brought it upon himself. He stood at the door, drenched for some reason, his black coat soaked through with rain. She leaped down the stairs like a little bird, bouncing straight into his arms. He caught her, lifting her by the waist. Baby! He kissed her deeply on the lips, carrying her directly up the stairs and into the bedroom on the second floor. The passion of the previous night had almost exhausted her strength, and she fell into a deep sleep in his embrace. He was the same, holding her waist, but clearly more fatigued than she was after driving for 5 hours back from his base. She woke up to find herself lying in his arms, his sharp chin resting on her shoulder, tickling her a bit with his stubble. She shifted slightly, trying to push away his large hand that was wrapped around her chest. He remained asleep, and her attempt to escape his embrace elicited a dissatisfied grunt from him in his sleep. She gazed closely at his face, marveling at how handsome he was. She held a magazine to cover the rest of his face, leaving only above the eyebrows visible. His eyebrows and high brow ridge, paired with his broad forehead and light golden curls, were too perfect. Then, she slowly lowered the magazine to reveal his eyes. Even though they were closed, his golden eyelashes and deep-set eyes looked so affectionate, even in sleep. His nose was so high, and his entire facial structure was so three-dimensional, with sensual lips that had no flaws at all. She casually flipped through the magazine's cover featuring a male star, and compared to him, that star suddenly paled in comparison. In the end, she concluded that he should be acting in movies, not serving in the military. She put down the magazine and stroked his Adam's apple and strong neck, his muscular chest and well-defined abs. If he wasn't acting, he should at least be a fashion model. Suddenly, she remembered the comically dressed tailor, Miller, who spoke of the Empire's model and his overwhelming clothing. She suddenly noticed something strange below his abdomen. She lifted a small corner of the white blanket covering his lower half. She couldn't help but gasp in surprise. The weekend quickly passed, and a new week began, but he did not leave. Last week, he had gotten caught in the rain and showed some symptoms of a cold, but after taking some medicine, he felt better. She knew he wasn't staying home just because of a little cold. Since morning, he had been holed up in his reception room, as if organizing something. As noon approached, they finished lunch together, and he went upstairs again, while she lazily leaned on the sofa in the hall, fiddling with a large bouquet of fresh flowers in a crystal vase. The doorbell rang, and she ran over to open the door. "Annabelle, what are you doing here? When I just came in, I saw a lot of guards at the door and cars parked in the yard. Is he still here?" Annabelle, carrying a lot of things, parked her bicycle next to the door and entered. Kanye nodded, taking the small handbag and a small box of snacks from her hands. "Yes, he won't be going to the base until Wednesday this week. Right now, he's in the third-floor reception room having a meeting with his subordinates," Kanye said in a low voice, as if afraid of disturbing him. "He's been busy lately, I don't know what he's up to." "Oh, I see. If I had known you weren't lonely, I wouldn't have come to join the fun," Annabelle said with a smile, her eyes scanning Kanye's loungewear, continuing down to her delicate, fair ankles. "Is your foot feeling better?" "It's all better now. I wasn't really hurt, I just slipped a bit." Kanye quickly stepped back with her left foot, hiding it behind her right, speaking even more softly. She wasn't wearing socks, and the black tattoo on her ankle was probably seen by Annabelle, although it wasn't clear what the writing was. "Look at you," Annabelle said, handing her a large woven basket. "This is for you." "What is it?" Kanye took it, having just seen Annabelle carrying several things, and this large basket was even more puzzling. She peered into the basket and gasped. "Wow!" The woven basket turned out to be a fluffy little puppy curled up inside, looking a bit dazed, with some fur not fully grown. Annabelle smiled as she lifted it out and placed it on the coffee table. Kanye reached out to touch its head but hesitated, a bit afraid of this furry creature, pulling her hand back. Looking at the trembling little puppy on the coffee table, Kanye suddenly recalled the day he had taken her to play with that huge, fierce military dog, which had scared her to tears, making her refuse to get down from the rocking chair until he coaxed her back. "Kanye, Kanye," Annabelle was shaking her arm. Kanye finally snapped back to reality, saying with lingering fear, "Actually, I'm really scared of those big dogs, but this little guy is really quite cute." "Ha ha, let it keep you company, and you won't feel so lonely." Thank you, Annabelle." Annabelle rummaged through her bag and placed some items on the coffee table. "This is the manuscript of that friend I told you about last time, and a pack of tea leaves. This tea was brought back from South Africa by my aunt." "Your aunt came?" "Ugh, don't mention it. She came to lecture me about getting married. What? You ran away from your wedding. Let's not talk about that, Annabelle said with a mysterious smile. Someone is at home today, so I'll take my leave now. Wait, stay for dinner before you go. Kanye stepped forward and linked her arm with Annabelle's. Forget it, let's do it another day. I don't want to be a big light bulb at your candlelight dinner. After seeing Annabelle off, Kanye went to the kitchen to get some milk to feed the puppy. Since it had a coat of white fur with a small gray spot on its head, she named it Teddy. After feeding it, she placed the little guy in a large wooden box, lining the bottom with some soft towels. The little creature seemed quite satisfied with its little nest, and after making a mess with the blankets and towels, it curled up into a semicircle and fell asleep, even letting out tiny snores. Kanye was amused by its adorable appearance, poking its damp little nose. Humph! You're just like a little pig, wanting to sleep after eating. It clearly didn't like being disturbed, wrinkling its nose and turning its head away, its little body twisting into two bends as it lay on the messy towels, its little paws flipping up. She had no idea how it managed to do that. Shh! Sleep now, sleep now. Kanye dragged the cardboard box to a corner of the hall, where it was warmer near the fireplace and could catch a bit of sunlight. I'll go back to my room for a nap. She yawned. The past couple of nights had been exhausting with him, and she had been sleep-deprived. After a lovely nap, she tidied herself up and came down from her bedroom to the hall, checking the cardboard box in the corner, only to find that Teddy was missing. She searched everywhere, almost combing through the entire house, but didn't see the little figure. Suddenly, she noticed the back door was open, seemingly left ajar by the servants moving something. A sense of foreboding washed over her. Could it be that the little guy woke up and ran out? She immediately dashed to the backyard to look for it, and finally found it in the military dog's cage. She didn't dare approach the cages of those large dogs that looked like wolves. As soon as she arrived at the kennel, those creatures alertedly bared their teeth at her. Not to mention their fierce teeth, even a mere swipe of their paws could crush Teddy. She could only seek help from him. She rushed into his office, disregarding the fact that he was in a meeting with several officers. She burst in, clearly catching him off guard with her impulsive action, staring at her as she entered. Ignoring the signals he was giving her, she stepped forward and grabbed his arm, almost crying out in panic, "Ryan! Oh my God, save him! I'm sorry, gentlemen." He gestured to an officer sitting across from him. "You take responsibility." She practically dragged him out, pulling him to the front of the dog cage. The strong military dogs couldn't contain their joy at seeing their owner, rushing forward to bark and greet him. The iron bars rattled as they collided, and he made a gesture, then placed his finger to his lips. "Shh, quiet." The well-trained large dogs immediately quieted down, sitting on their hind legs, keeping their upper bodies upright, as if they were soldiers on guard, looking even more orderly than humans, except for their thick tails sweeping back and forth on the ground, panting and trying to please their owner. "Please, get Teddy out. It's going to get bitten to death." "Teddy? You mean that thing?" He squatted down, looking into the cage along the direction of her finger, where a white tuft of fur lay on the ground. He gently poked the pile of fur with his sword. "Dear, it seems like it's asleep." "Asleep? How could that be?" The puppy rolled over, opened its dazed eyes, and seemed to recognize its owner outside the cage, wagging its tail at her and squeezing through the bars. Kanye immediately stepped forward to pick up the puppy, holding it up to her face, carefully checking for any injuries. He couldn't help but chuckle, pinching the puppy's short ears between his fingers. "Is this the dog you're raising? If this can be called a dog, it looks more like an Angora rabbit. But honestly, it seems to have quite good diplomatic skills." He looked at the few military dogs still sitting upright in the cage and, using the training commands, issued a few short, crisp syllables, which were heard as a relax command. The dogs, as if under a spell, immediately returned to their usual carefree selves. Teddy was uncomfortable being pinched by his fingers, and it nuzzled into Kanye's chest. "You little lecher! That's mine!" He snatched the puppy from her arms. Kanye glared at him. This man was so domineering, even getting jealous over a little dog. She snatched the squirming puppy back from his hands, which was scratching at his hand. He looked at her, saying somewhat helplessly. He spread his fingers above his head to measure. "And there's that Maltese dog that's recently popular among upper-class women, with long hair covering its eyes." Kanye tightly hugged Teddy, ignoring his recommendations. "No, I want to raise it. Even though my Teddy isn't that good looking and doesn't have any purebred lineage, its background is so pitiful, abandoned right after birth. No matter what, it's still alive." "Well, fine, it's up to you." He shrugged. Perhaps it was too small, it easily squeezed through the bars of the cage, naively thinking that these German shepherds were its kind. But they didn't see it as a dog at all, which kept it safe. As long as it didn't steal their food, basically, Teddy could blend in among this group of German shepherds. Moreover, Teddy was still nursing and couldn't bite into those large pieces of beef. Even though it was still winter outside, the house was warm like spring. She lay curled up in his arms, drowsy. He lay on his back, his blue eyes open, resting his arms behind his head, his shirt slightly disheveled, and his pants not completely down. One arm wrapped around her, stroking her smooth hair. He felt like sitting up to smoke a cigarette, but the silky touch between his fingers made him reluctant to pull his hand away from her black hair. "Baby, in a few days, I might have to be transferred to another place." "Where to?" She weakly clung to his strong arm and asked. "To the capital." "To the capital? Why?" He pulled her closer and kissed her forehead gently. My superior is summoning me, and my work here has come to a pause. She lowered her head, actually somewhat aware that her position at the art school in the neighboring country was likely connected to the country's downfall and his scheming. But she didn't want to think about it. Nestling into his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, she quietly asked, "Can I go with you?" He paused for a moment, then softly replied, "I won't be leaving just yet, I have to wait for instructions from above." After saying that, his ice blue eyes flickered, lowering his voice, and softly asked in her ear, "Do you want to go with me?" Wherever you go, I'll go with you." She nodded firmly, yawning like a little cat, and wrapped her arms around his neck. Kanye knew that Easter was an important holiday in the West. Although the entire Europe was shrouded in the shadow of war, the most bustling square and shopping streets in this city were still filled with festive atmosphere. Apart from the red and black flags, colorful banners decorated every corner. He was dressed in plain clothes, holding her hand as they walked through the crowded square. This Sunday is Easter. Easter is the holiday that commemorates the resurrection of Jesus. Kanye blinked her black eyes and asked, "Here, Easter must be the second most important holiday after Christmas, right? At this time, family and friends must gather together to celebrate." "Yes, darling." He frowned slightly, his answer a bit curt, suddenly pointing to the clock tower in the center of the square. "Look over there, starting from 11 a.m., every hour, 12 knights will come out to announce the time, and those little figures will come out to sing and dance. But I can't see anything." She stood on her tiptoes, trying to catch a glimpse of the scene he described. "Because it's not time yet, darling." He laughed, seemingly mocking her indifferent sense of time without mercy. "Ugh." She wrinkled her nose and huffed in grievance, but soon sweetness replaced it. It was rare for him to have time to take her out shopping. After a week of being together, he had been busy all day long. But there were also things that made her dissatisfied, which was that even though he was in plain clothes, without that tall uniform and shiny medals, he remained the center of attention wherever he went. Kanye noticed a woman in a mink coat, wearing a black mink hat and holding a small black dog, glancing sideways at him while stepping delicately in her high-heeled black shoes. "Let's go check that out." Kanye tugged at his arm, pointing to a shop not far away. "This is the place you took me to buy clothes last time, right? Madame Chanel's fashion store." "Actually, when I was studying, I never even dared to think about buying such expensive clothes." He smiled and nodded at her, and as she pulled him across the street, he first looked around, then pushed open the newly refreshed shop door, wrapping his arm around her waist as they entered. The two female shop assistants who were originally there seemed to have left. The new shop assistant, with her hands crossed and a polite smile, approached them. "Welcome. We have new summer clothes, madam, sir." Kanye joyfully stepped forward to choose the clothes, while he stood at the door, facing the glass window outside. He took out a cigarette case and lighter from his pocket, lit a cigarette, and began to smoke. Across the street, the shop owner was directing several assistants as they decorated an Easter egg tree. Some were stringing painted eggs into chains, while others were hanging them on pine branches. "What are you looking at?" She suddenly leaned close to him, and he looked down at her. "Look at the Easter tree across the street." Following his finger, she saw a green pine tree adorned with strings of colorful eggs. "Is this called an Easter tree? It's so beautiful. I thought only at Christmas do people set up a pine tree in front of their doors and place all sorts of gifts. Some regions also do this for Easter." That shop owner, he should be from Baden-Baden. "How do you know?" "There's nothing written on his face." Besides his facial features, there are 3 reasons. First, only in the Black Forest region do they have Easter trees. Second, his shop has those cuckoo clocks made of firewood. Although these are common here, the hand-painted designs are only found in the style of craftsmen from the mountainous areas of the Black Forest. Third, this tree is not only decorated with menus and rabbits but also roosters, which is a custom only found in Upper Bavaria or Austria. He is clearly not an Austrian. Kanye felt a bit dazed listening to him, feeling like he was a great detective like Sherlock Holmes from British novels, but she still felt a bit unconvinced. "Then guess where I'm from?" "You can't just say America or South Africa, you have to guess which province or city. If you can figure that out, then you really are impressive." "My beautiful goddess Ostara," he smiled, taking her hand and lightly kissing the back of it, "you come from the heavens, beside God." She felt dizzy from his affection, as if her feet were stepping on soft, fluffy clouds. She vaguely heard him say to the shop assistant, "Please wrap up those clothes, and those summer dresses as well, I want them all." "But, it's only spring now." High-end women's clothing stores like Madame Chanel release their collections a season in advance, don't they? "Sir, you really are an expert." The shop assistant quickly began wrapping the clothes. He smiled, seemingly taking the shop assistant's praise at face value. "Those shoes are nice too, and add those 2 handbags on the shelf as well." His left hand was filled with bags of various sizes, and his right hand was not empty either, as she was holding onto his arm. "Oh my, are you planning to buy out this store?" she muttered. "You should save some money." "Look at those 2 shop assistants, they've been watching us and giggling, they can't stop smiling." He turned his head to look at her little face, unable to help but laugh at her expression. He pinched her cheek, then, not satisfied, faced her directly and, taking advantage of her unguarded moment, leaned down to kiss her pouting lips. "They are jealous of your youth and beauty, and how charming you are." "Who said that?" "They are clearly staring at you." He raised an eyebrow, non-committal, clearly not intending to continue her topic, but instead pointed to a small trinket in the shop window across the street. "Look at that." "What?" She stretched her neck, looking in the direction he indicated. "Come on, let's go inside and take a look." He took her arm and led her into the shop, which sold handicrafts. Delicate little items filled the shelves. He pointed to a carved music box, its upper half shaped like an eggshell. He gently pressed a small switch, and two little doors opened like angel wings, revealing a dancing little girl inside. He laughed and pulled her closer. "Look, this little ballerina on the music box looks so much like you." "Like me?" Kanye couldn't help but be drawn to it. "When you wear a ballet dress and dance in Swan Lake, isn't it just like this?" "Eh? When did you see me dance ballet?" He was caught off guard by her sudden question. "In my dreams. I've seen it many times." "How annoying." She blushed, looking up and touching the exquisite little trinket. "I want this music box as an Easter gift." He did not, as usual, fall asleep after their passionate moments, but instead sat in the armchair by the window, smoking one cigarette after another. The window was slightly ajar, and a cool breeze wafted in. He glanced at her again. The person sleeping on the bed was covered tightly with a blanket, her breathing steady. Recently, he had been very busy, often staying up late, and smoking more and more. She had once tried to hide all his cigarettes and even confiscated all his pocket money, but those methods did not work. Too many people were sending him cigarettes. Just thinking about how she argued with him over that made him want to laugh. After extinguishing the cigarette in his hand, he stood up from the armchair, put on a white shirt and black trousers, and quietly walked to the reception room. He opened the safe and took out a brown folder, gently unfolding it. Inside was a photocopied document. The upper left corner had a blank file number column. This document was clearly different from those files. The number column was empty, which could only mean two things: it was classified or it had not been numbered in time. In fact, this was a girl's resume. His gaze fell on the column for her place of origin. He parted his lips and softly read it out loud, repeating it several times to remember it in his mind. Inside the divider of this brown folder was a black and white photo of several girls in ballet skirts and shoes, embracing each other, smiling intimately and vivaciously. The girl in the center, with black hair, appeared particularly delicate and graceful compared to her companions. She slightly lowered her head, her large black eyes looking at the camera, smiling shyly. He stared at the photo, pulled it out from the folder, and tucked it into a large black leather notebook, which was also locked in the safe. This notebook was very exquisite, filled with densely recorded information. He carefully closed the notebook. The black leather cover had 2 lines of embossed text and a silver eagle. He placed the notebook on his desk and took out several important documents from the safe, putting them all into his briefcase. Then he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, put on his uniform, donned a white scarf, and wrapped himself in a long black coat. As he passed by the door of the second-floor bedroom, he gently pushed the door open. She was sleeping soundly and did not notice that her companion had already left. He peered through the crack of the door, watching her. She was the girl in the photo, lying with her back to the door, curled up in bed. Her little dog was sleeping at the foot of the bed. This fluffy little white creature always climbed out of its box in the middle of the night, then laboriously climbed up the stairs, sneaking into their bedroom, finding the closest spot on the carpet next to her. It seemed to have been awakened by him. Its somewhat dazed black eyes looked toward the dark figure at the door, seemingly sensing that the newcomer was not friendly. Instinctively, it opened its small mouth, which had not yet grown all its teeth, trying to let out a tender whimper. He had to gently hush it. "Shh, be quiet, little pup." The little dog whimpered softly and then closed its eyes again, falling back asleep. His gaze returned to the person on the bed. She turned over, softly murmuring, as if dreaming some wonderful dream, a happy smile appearing on her cheeks. He furrowed his brow. In fact, both her sleeping face and her smiling face were equally enchanting. He did not know how long he stood at the door, the briefcase in his hand feeling somewhat heavy due to being filled with documents. He vaguely heard the grandfather clock in the hall downstairs chime 3 times. When he heard the long chime, his ice-blue eyes flickered uncertainly, meaning it was now 3 in the morning. He had to leave, not as she imagined, driving for 5 hours to the neighboring country's station, but heading to the military airport in the suburbs, where a special plane was waiting for him. Because early tomorrow morning, his superior would be waiting for his report at the desk in the city hall. "Goodbye, my angel," he silently thought, not saying it out loud. She was sleeping so soundly that she wouldn't hear his farewell, and he didn't want her to hear it either, because he didn't know how to say goodbye to her. He put on the black hat tucked under his arm, lowered the brim, and turned to go down the stairs. This time he did not go back on his word. In her memory, he would never promise things he wasn't sure he could do, but there were times when he would be vague and ambiguous, just like when she asked him when he would set off for the capital. In the recent calls, he had been performing well, even though he would only call her close to midnight, and each time the conversation lasted less than half an hour. However, she decided not to be angry with him anymore. Annabelle had given her a few new manuscripts, and she promised to proofread them for her. Every night, in the stillness of the deep night, she would proofread and copy them while lying in bed. A sudden, urgent phone ring broke the silence. Kanye scrambled up, leaving the manuscript on the bed, and grabbed the receiver from the bedside table. "Baby, you picked up really fast. I just dialed the number, I was right here in bed." She was close to the phone and could grab the receiver at any moment. "Oh? In bed, doing what?" His tone was somewhat ambiguous. "Reading." She obediently replied immediately. "Oh," he responded, and she could hear the sound of pages rustling on the other end. Unable to contain her curiosity, she asked, "Are you reading too?" He paused for a moment. No, not that. Well, I just finished handling a document. How was your day? Kanye nodded, as if he could see her. I'm good. Is it cold over there? It's a higher latitude here, so naturally, the temperature is a bit lower. But it's already spring, and the trees are green. A smile appeared on Kanye's face. She loved hearing him talk about the weather. It reminded her of the days when he rode with her along the riverbank. You've been busy lately, right? Don't I call you every day? Baby. His voice was light and gentle. Yeah, I know. Her cheeks suddenly flushed, and she murmured softly, but it's not enough. I want to hear your voice every moment. The more she spoke, the quieter she became, and she heard him chuckle on the other end, his laughter growing louder. Baby, what book are you reading? Red Roses and White Roses. She replied excitedly, it's a manuscript, not yet published. Let me read it to you. Before he could agree, she immediately flipped open the book. But my translation might not be very good, so listen carefully. Perhaps every man has had 2 women like this, at least 2. Marrying the red rose, over time, the red becomes a smear of mosquito blood on the wall, while the white remains the bright moonlight before the bed. Marrying the white rose, the white becomes a grain of rice stuck on the clothes, while the red is a vermilion mole on the heart. What's in front of the bed? The bright moonlight, meaning it's as bright and clear as moonlight. She explained. All right, he paused slightly before asking, if you marry a white woman, then what is the red rose? The vermilion mole. It's the mole between the eyebrows. In my country, women consider this beautiful. She explained again. He hummed, as if to acknowledge her. She seemed to get into the rhythm of reading. Actually, every woman's soul contains both the red rose and the white rose, but only a man who understands love can make the woman he loves more and more beautiful. Even the cold white flower, like starlight, can bloom charmingly. She finished this passage with great enthusiasm, but there was silence on the other end. Hello, are you listening? Baby, do you miss me? He suddenly asked, his voice hoarse. Stop it, don't interrupt. I'm reciting poetry for you. All right, you little rascal. I'm listening. I won't read any more, Kanye pouted, deliberately pretending to be a bit angry, and complained, you're not even paying attention. I'm listening. He repeated his earlier words. Although she couldn't see his expression, she could imagine his dismissive look. I won't read any more. I've read so much already. I want you to read me a poem. She said this with great anticipation, but there was a long silence on the other end. Hello? Are you there? She suddenly felt that the atmosphere was a bit off and became anxious. Did he get angry and hang up? But she didn't hear the sound of the call ending. Just as she was about to hang up and redial, she suddenly heard footsteps and the sound of pages turning on the other end. Then she heard him clear his throat and slightly raise his voice. "What is love?" He paused for a few seconds before starting to read in a standard manner. "What is love? Love is a star shrouded in morning mist. Without you, heaven becomes hell. Lovely battle, subtle tremors, this, shy and gentle embrace, on your beautiful cherry lips. I usually use kisses to replace words. My kiss is like a flame that bursts forth from the depths of my heart. The happiness that kissed me yesterday has already turned to nothing today. The sincere love I gain never lasts long. There is one way for a woman to make a man happy, but there are over 3,000 ways to make a man unhappy. Only in love is there truth." What exactly is love? No one can answer that. Because it was the poet's mother tongue, his pronunciation was very standard, with the right emphasis and pauses, and his voice was so affectionate that as she listened, her heart trembled, and her eyes became a bit moist. While she was brewing her emotions, she heard him chuckling on the other end. "What are you laughing at?" Isn't it funny?" It sounded like he had put the book down on the table with a thud. "Where's the humor in that?" she asked him, confused. He was silent for a moment, his tone somewhat uncooperative, as if he were talking to himself. "I don't know when, but a female secretary left a poetry collection on my desk." "What?" she protested loudly. "Is it that secretary named Anna?" "Anna? I have too many secretaries, I can't remember." His voice had a hint of pride, as if he was suppressing laughter. She held the receiver tightly, feeling both anxious and angry, unable to find her voice. He decided to stop teasing her, took a deep breath, and returned to his usual tone. "It's getting late, you should rest." After a slight pause, he said in a deeper voice, "Good night, my baby." Okay, good night." Her voice was a bit lonely, feeling a pang in her heart. But his tone clearly indicated he wanted to end the call. She should understand, he must be very tired lately since he only called late at night. Slowly, she moved the receiver away from her ear. Although she felt a bit reluctant, she had to hang up first. She knew he was waiting for her to end the call because it was always like this. He was happy to maintain his gentlemanly demeanor, letting the lady hang up first. This time, however, she unexpectedly heard his voice on the other end. Actually, she widened her eyes, listening intently to what he would say next, only to hear his soothing and gentle voice. "Whether it's red or white, my lovely little rose, how wonderful it would be if I could tuck you into my pocket and carry you with me." Inhaling the faint scent of ink from the manuscript, her mood suddenly brightened. Yes, regardless of red roses or white roses, roses symbolize love. She lay down in the soft bed, pulling the blanket up high, leaving only a pair of shiny black eyes gazing towards the large floor-to-ceiling window. The bouquet of yellow roses on the table was blooming beautifully. He had been gone for 2 weeks now, and this bouquet of roses was from that Easter Sunday when he first called her. The maid, Abigail, had received it early in the morning from a clerk at a flower shop and brought it to her room on the 2nd floor, soaking in that glass vase. The allure of the red rose, the purity of the white rose, and the language of this bouquet of yellow roses, besides the faint sadness of lost love, also carried the unwavering promise of waiting. Time flies, and nearly a month has passed. She has never taken the initiative to call him, because he still adheres strictly to discipline, calling her every midnight. Sometimes it's a warm greeting, and sometimes the conversation drifts into more intimate topics. "All right, from now on, your hand is my hand," he softens his voice, "let it gently caress you, touch your forehead, your lips, and your chest." She really followed his instructions, not missing a single step, but then she heard him ask knowingly, "What are you doing, baby?" He smirked, "Do you want it?" She was so shy that she didn't know how to respond. After a long internal struggle, she finally managed to produce a voice that was almost inaudible even to herself. "What about below? What should I do?" But there was no response from the other end. "Hello," she said softly. After a while, she heard faint snoring. This guy actually fell asleep at a time like this. She thought he must be extremely tired. She felt a bit frustrated, but listening to his even breathing made her reluctant to wake him. Gradually, she also felt a bit drowsy, just not wanting to hang up the phone. She liked this, keeping the line open, even if they didn't say a word, imagining how he looked while asleep, as if he were really there beside her. The morning sunlight woke him up, and as his consciousness gradually returned, he realized he had actually fallen asleep in his clothes. Before that, it seemed he had done something, and now he was all disheveled. He half closed his eyes, recalling the interesting conversation he had with her last night, imagining her cute blushing face. Suddenly, he thought of something, his eyes widened, and he grabbed the phone receiver that was beside the bed. There was no dead air on the line, clearly the other party hadn't hung up. This was not good, he had unknowingly fallen asleep while the phone was still connected, letting it stay on all night. He tentatively cleared his throat into the receiver. "Are you awake?" came a sweet girl's voice from the other end. "Good morning, Mr. 12:15. Hearing her voice, he relaxed a bit. "Oh my God, did our phone stay connected all night?" "Yeah, you were sleeping the whole time." She paused slightly. "I was going to wake you up after an hour to remind you to take off your clothes, shower, and go back to sleep, but I couldn't bear to do it. I wanted you to sleep a little longer, and before I knew it, it was dawn." He pondered for a moment and then asked softly, "Baby, did you not sleep all night?" "Well, I was a bit dazed at first, but then I was woken up by your snoring." What else did I say?" "Like, calling your name in my dreams." "How annoying! How did you know?" I had a little selfish motive, which was to eavesdrop and see if you would call out another woman's name while you were asleep." "So what was the result?" he asked again. "The result?" She seemed to sense his slight guilt and deliberately kept him in suspense, pausing for a few seconds before saying, "A little pig was snoring all night, sleeping very soundly." Snore, 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 snore. As she spoke, she mimicked the sound of a little pig snoring. "Ha ha!" he laughed at her, rarely hearing him laugh so heartily. "Baby, it's getting late, I should get ready for work." "I need to sleep too, I'm so sleepy." Kenya yawned, covering her mouth. "Go ahead and sleep." He pressed a kiss on the phone receiver. "My angel." After hanging up, he didn't get out of bed immediately. His eyes scanned the alarm clock on the bedside table. It was almost 6 a.m. He still had some time. He rummaged through the bedside cabinet and found a new pack of cigarettes. Here, he could smoke freely without having to sneak around to drink. For some time now, he had been living in this suite in the office building. The suite was very well equipped, not much worse than the hotel suites across the square at the Empire Building. There were also reliable staff coming in daily to clean. No matter how late he worked, he could rest immediately, saving time on the commute. But for some reason, he often thought of the mansion located in the southern city. He had properties in many countries. Of course, these were not known to the public. Perhaps it was because that place was in the mountains, particularly cold in winter. Even during Easter, the temperature difference between morning and evening was still significant. There, he had many old subordinates and a few friends, servants who had followed him for years, his beloved horses, and his favorite dogs. The sun was gradually rising, shining through the gaps in the branches with tender leaves and the narrow window glass, landing on the bed. He squinted slightly, facing the morning light, looking at the little ballerina in the opened eggshell on the windowsill, her little bottom raised as she posed in a dance, her pink skirt illuminated by the morning light, appearing somewhat transparent. In the morning, wrapped in the quilt, she had a good sleep. The poor teddy was hungry, crying out loudly, its little paws scratching at the wooden bed frame. Kenya was finally awakened by it, swaying as she got up to feed it a piece of sausage and a bowl of milk, while she also had some fruit, considering it her lunch. After brewing a cup of tea, she leisurely went to the study. She remembered Annabelle saying that to understand a person, it wasn't necessary to meet in person. True understanding is not superficial, it's a spiritual exchange. One observes a person's essence through the books they read, the music they listen to, gradually understanding their thoughts and delving into their soul. She didn't think as complicatedly as Annabelle, she just wanted to read books to pass the time. In the large cabinet in the middle of the study, there were some books he often flipped through. She took down a large brown leather-bound book and opened it, surprised to find that he had a habit of making annotations in the corners of the pages. So she began to pay attention to these books and gradually discovered a pattern, the books with the most annotations were clearly the ones he read most seriously, evidently those thick, obscure philosophical works. Philosophy was indeed a headache-inducing subject. As she read, she yawned repeatedly, recalling her childhood when she followed her father and the private tutor to read the 100 Schools of Thought. Her academic performance was not very good. Her father was helpless about it, but her mother always advised, "A woman's lack of talent is virtue." Yet she was quite nimble, having loved to play with her father's musical equipment since she was little, so her father sent her to the United States to study music. Moreover, he even read some theories on drama and literary works. Behind the classic literary passages, he had written a series of letters in dark ink, flowing and coherent, French-style romance without illness. Self-righteous British. Stubborn, resilient, radical, and extreme Slavs. Kanye was both amused and exasperated by the content of those annotations, especially when she saw a mathematical problem mentioned in a novel. He had seriously worked out a calculation below it. Kanye covered her mouth and laughed, flipping through a few more pages. After a somewhat exaggerated artistic description, he wrote in blue ink, "How is this possible?" Upon seeing this, she could no longer hold back and burst out laughing, causing the maid outside the study to peek in curiously. This guy's thinking was adorably rigid and persistent. She took a pencil from the pen holder beside the desk and carefully added a line of small text beneath his annotation, "A nitpicker." In these Western classics, Kanye made a surprising discovery: there was actually an English translation of Dream of the Red Chamber. She opened this large book with excitement, but his evaluation was evidently lacking in romance. On the title page, he had hastily written a line, "The frivolous affairs of idle men and women in the Grand View Garden." How could this guy so casually dismiss the immortal work left by their ancestors? She gripped the pencil, feeling indignant, wanting to argue with him on the pages, but couldn't think of any words to refute him. After flipping through the entire book, she found only that one comment. Suddenly, she noticed a small bookmark on the table that hadn't been there before. Perhaps it had fallen out from one of the books when she was flipping through them. The bookmark was neatly written with April 24, 1904, birthday. He seemed to dislike others inquiring about his age, keeping the secret like a lady. She secretly delighted in discovering this little secret, calculated in her mind, and realized that in a few days, it would be his 35th birthday. In her hometown, men of this age were expected to settle down, yet he was still single. Kanye suddenly remembered that her great-uncle, who worked in the government, was born in the 27th year of the Edwardian era, just 3 years older than him. Her great-uncle's eldest son had gotten married the year before and had gone to Capital to celebrate, but she had just started studying in the United States at that time and had only sent a congratulatory letter. Not knowing from which book the bookmark had fallen, Kanye had to tuck it back into Dream of the Red Chamber. She suddenly remembered something, looked up at the window, and realized it was already spring. She had also become not seeing the sun every day, not knowing spring year after year. She couldn't spend her days idly like this. She decided to clean out her seasonal clothes, so she put the book back on the shelf and went to the storage room. This house had a large room set up on the shady side, filled with floor-to-ceiling wardrobes and cabinets. She had cleaned this place more than once, organizing these cabinets. Now, looking at these clothes, her feelings were somewhat different from when she was serving. Even the black leather long coat no longer made her feel cold and fearful. She took out the clothes one by one. These clothes were well preserved, each sleeve having a small label that read Regular Duty Uniform, Armored Trooper Jacket, Camouflage Uniform, Summer Uniform, Honor Guard Uniform, Evening Dress. Not only were there various types, but the colors also differed. Just the outerwear included black, dark gray, green, cream, and white. Besides the clothes, there were various swords and daggers, long boots, and shoes in the cabinets. Kanye was dazzled. These could build a clothing and accessories museum. Some had shoulder insignia clearly indicating ranks and even positions, showing that those clothes were not made for him, as those insignia were not quite the same as the one he usually wore, which was surrounded by gold and silver threads and adorned with stars. A train filled with passengers was traveling along the tracks, and a crew member hurriedly made his way through the crowded second-class carriage to the outside of a first-class compartment, followed by two special passengers who had gathered due to an emergency announcement. A brown-haired man in a dark blue coat stepped out of compartment number 2, looking somewhat anxious, as he was actually waiting for the crew to arrive. "This gentleman is a doctor, and this young lady is a nurse," the crew member introduced. "He is much better now, I think actually." The brown-haired man's gaze fell on Kanye, smiling at her with his eyes. I think actually, the doctor can be dismissed. We need this nurse to help take care of him." His lake blue eyes flickered. If I can be of help," Kanye replied timidly. The train continued to run on the tracks, and under the crew member's persuasion, she moved from the crowded second-class carriage to this luxurious first-class compartment. During this time, she only needed to check on the patient in the adjacent compartment every hour. The man's condition had stabilized, he had used an inhaler and taken some medication, and now he was sleeping soundly. The man sitting across from her occasionally glanced at her. They exchanged a few words and learned each other's names. Kanye was not used to chatting with unfamiliar men, especially one as handsome as he was, which made her even shyer. Although she kept her head down, looking out the window, she could still feel his gentle gaze on her. She could hardly believe she was already on a train heading north. An hour ago, she had lied to the maids, saying she was going to meet Annabelle to buy something in the city center. To avoid the guards' eyes, she hadn't even taken her suitcase, dressing instead like a wealthy lady going out shopping, carrying a small handbag and leading Teddy. Her suitcase had already been sent to the grass in advance. All of this had been meticulously planned for the 24th, his birthday. This sudden decision was less about giving him a surprise and more about her longing for him. Although he called her every day, his voice always sounded exhausted, and he would sometimes fall asleep while talking. The feeling of both missing and worrying about him tormented her to the point where she could not stay put for even a moment. "Swan Castle," she suddenly exclaimed, looking out the window. Amidst the white-capped mountains, a fairy tale castle with Gothic spires appeared, and she recognized it at a glance. As the train turned on the winding tracks, the entire castle came into view. "Yes, this castle originally belonged to Ludwig II," he said, looking out the window with a smile. At the moment she had exclaimed, a charming light flickered in his dark eyes, as if he no longer had to be on guard, appearing innocent like a child, filled with youthful tenderness, which only deepened his interest in this girl. "No, it hasn't been abandoned, it now belongs to the Albert family, and the descendants have restored it." She glanced at him, his eyes so handsome, with deep lake blue pupils that seemed to release a magical pull, drawing one in. She paused for a moment, then quickly looked back out the window. He smiled noncommittally, and from her tone, it seemed she understood this history better than he did. "This castle is full of romanticism and has a well-known tale about Ludwig II and the former Austrian queen, his cousin Princess Sissi. Their love was not accepted by society and ultimately ended in vain." She seemed not to hear his introduction but was lost in memories, recalling how he had brought her to this dreamlike castle, walking through every room, telling her the story of the castle's owner, the young prince and Princess Sissi's romance, and his friendship with Bismarck. He had also taken her to the opera hall, recounting the interactions between the castle's owner and the musician and playwright Wagner. They had gazed from the tower at the snow-covered mountains, the melting lake, and the spring-like earth, sharing many local folk tales about magic and knights. Previously, she had only known about Wagner's dramas but had not deeply understood the background and stage of those great works. Perhaps from the moment he brought her to this castle, she gradually began to believe in all of it. She understood why that melancholic king, who always held on to romantic ideals, indifferent to politics, preferred to wander alone at night, could connect so well with the iron-willed Chancellor Bismarck, because in everyone's heart, there exists such a castle, the purest and holiest realm like heaven, and his eyes, like the snow-capped peaks surrounding the castle, were crystal-clear ice blue. She seemed to hear his words echoing in her ears, "For profit, perhaps I could sell everything, but I will always hold on to love. How wonderful it would be if there were no regrets in love in this world," she murmured softly, her mood seemingly turning somber, her slightly furrowed brows hinting at melancholy and sorrow. He looked at her, puzzled by why this Eastern girl could change so quickly. Although her frowning expression was gentle and charming, he still preferred her smiling face. "What do you have in your little suitcase?" "Ha, did you discover it?" Kanye said, "It's a gift from my friend, a mixed-breed dog named Teddy." She carefully pinched the little dog's neck and chest, lifting it up and placing it on the small table. The puppy, having been cooped up in the suitcase for a long time, seemed a bit excited as it crawled around the small dining table, almost falling off the edge. He quickly reached out to catch the little guy's backside, lifting it to the center of the table, smiling as he examined it for a moment. "Gianna, I think you're mistaken, this is a border collie, just a brown subspecies. Its fur color and pattern are a bit special, it should be about 45 days old." He gently patted the puppy's head. "So good." Teddy clearly enjoyed his touch, nuzzling against his arm. "Haha, can I hold him?" He lifted the puppy with both hands, looking at its hind legs in the light from the wall lamp in the corridor. The puppy rolled over, exposing its round belly, kicking in his palms, and he smiled. "It's a girl, she's a bit shy." Kanye looked at him, curious. "How do you know?" His lake blue eyes sparkled with amusement as he looked at her gently. Suddenly, Kanye realized something and blushed. "I'm sorry, I think I need to go to the restroom. Can you watch her for me?" In fact, she had wanted to go to the restroom earlier. The train had just announced an asthma emergency requiring a doctor. Although she was just an intern nurse, her grandmother had asthma, and her father had sought out famous doctors for it, so she knew a few remedies that could help. Of course. She walked to the restroom in the compartment, turned the doorknob, and found it locked. She hurried to the restroom in the adjacent carriage, which was closer to second class, only to discover there was no toilet paper. She had to exit and return to her compartment to get some. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she smiled at the handsome man who was playing with the puppy, burying her head in her bag. Suddenly, she remembered that the roll of toilet paper she had brought was already used up by Teddy. He understood and took out a box of tissues, handing it to her. She took it with both hands, her face turning even redder, and hurried back to the restroom. Just as she came out of the restroom, a man wearing a cap suddenly appeared from nowhere and reached out to stop her. "What do you want?" Kanye felt a bit scared and instinctively shrank back. She couldn't see his face, but the eyes beneath the cap were cunning and alert. "Are you Miss Gianna?" he asked softly, but it was clear he already knew the answer. She stammered, unsure how to respond. "Please don't be nervous. I am a man of General Ryan, sent to deliver a message to you. This train will arrive at the capital station at 6:30 tomorrow morning. Before that, it would be best for you to stay in compartment V2 and not wander around. After the train arrives, please exit from the left side of carriage number 4, he will be there to meet you." It was indeed his arrangement. He knew her whereabouts and had placed someone on the train to contact her. Kanye was very surprised. She hadn't told anyone about this secret operation, only leaving a note for the clueless accomplice Annabelle, which would be mailed to her, and she wouldn't see it so soon. "How did you find out about me?" "Clearly, you haven't connected the dots," the man said, leaning against the door, whispering in her ear. This was a small hint, but she didn't understand. He continued, "Please give me some of your tissues, because the gentleman with you may have already become suspicious." After saying this, he tore off a piece of tissue from the wad in her dazed hands, crumpling it in his hand, while simultaneously slipping a small note into her dress pocket, tipping his hat as if to salute her. "I wish you a pleasant journey, madam." Kanye turned to look towards the second-class carriage, only to see the carriage swaying with a crowd of people, and his figure had already disappeared into the throng. Kanye could not remain as calm and composed as that agent. She returned to the restroom, splashed some cool water on her cheeks to wake herself up a bit. She couldn't understand how he knew her whereabouts. His perceptiveness was always astonishing, and his speed of action was like lightning. Suddenly, she remembered the note in her pocket. She opened her palm to reveal the note, which depicted a small dove flying out of a train door, with the carriage number and platform number clearly marked. She recognized the capital letters and numbers as his handwriting, and the little dove resembled her drawing. She exited the restroom and looked at the various passengers outside. Could it be that this carriage was filled with his spies? Perhaps in the city she had just left and the capital she was about to arrive at, he had placed his people, and her every move was under his control. She felt a bit lost. Her original plan to suddenly appear before him and give him a surprise had fallen through. But then she felt a warm sensation. He was concerned for her safety and left her some space, only sending someone to deliver a message instead of arranging for two soldiers in black uniforms with red armbands to sit across from her, watching her like a prisoner. "Gianna, what's wrong?" the man who had been sitting in the private room asked with concern. Since the moment the girl returned, she had been staring blankly at her seat. He had asked her several questions, but she only responded absent-mindedly with a few words, while the night outside gradually darkened. Kanye held the note tightly in her palm, dampened by sweat. She finally remembered that it was time to put it away. Taking out a small satin pouch from her handbag, she stuffed the note inside. He had clearly seen the small satin-like purse. "You just mentioned that your hometown is in South Africa. In my impression, that is the homeland of silk and tea, a country with an ancient and profound civilization." Seeing that she did not respond, only blushing shyly, still lost in thought, he asked, "Are you out here alone? Who do you have at home?" "My parents are both alive. I have an older sister and two younger sisters, and a little brother." Kanye glanced at him and added, "He was born of a concubine." "In your country, can a man marry multiple women?" He seemed very interested in this question. Kanye nodded, "Yes. Actually my father didn't want to take a concubine, but my mother always gave birth to daughters and couldn't have a son, so she took in a maid as a concubine, and she gave birth to my little brother." "Yes, perhaps every nation in the world prefers boys," he smiled. "Please forgive me, I don't mean to disrespect women by saying this. Nowadays, women can do many jobs, but there are still many things that are more suitable for men to do, like war. When he said this word, his tone remained gentle, but his lake blue eyes became much deeper. "What about your family?" Kanye asked. "I have 2 older brothers. The eldest went insane at a young age, and the second brother enlisted, but got caught up in an internal military struggle, and later, he committed suicide." "Ah, I'm sorry," she regretted asking such a blunt question, not expecting that he seemed somewhat detached, and his background was so unfortunate. "It's okay," he shook his head and smiled at her. "Actually, those things happened when I was little." Kanye didn't know what to say, lowering her head in silence for a while, until he spoke first. "I see you always looking out the window. It's pitch black outside, is there any scenery?" He playfully leaned his face against the glass, peering outside. Kanye gazed at his shadow on the glass. He was so handsome that even his reflection was captivating, with very obvious ethnic features: a high nose, deep-set eyes, but his features were very soft, not the ruggedness of a chiseled face, revealing a kind of elegant charm. One thing that was different was that he had brown hair, longer than his ears, with slightly curled ends, adding a touch of melancholy. "There's no scenery, just the black night outside." Kanye slightly lowered her eyes and looked again at the bottomless darkness outside the window. Every time she did this, a surge of emotion welled up in her heart. "Are you missing someone?" he suddenly asked, his tone somewhat serious. "Let me guess, you must be thinking of your beloved." Before Kanye could respond, he quickly asked, "The reason you went to the capital is to find him, right? What does he do? A doctor? A lawyer? Or a businessman? He must be a very outstanding man." Kanye shook her head, her voice lacking confidence. "He is a farmer." She lied, because she truly hoped for that. He paused for a moment, his expression seeming to freeze for an instant, then he smiled. "A farmer? That's really nice. But no matter who he is, the one loved by you must be very happy. It's really enviable, because you give off such a good feeling. Being by your side feels like basking in the afternoon sun, very pleasant and warm." Kanye smiled faintly. Being next to him felt like being illuminated by soft moonlight. He was so handsome, like a prince under the moonlight. This man had lake blue eyes, the pupils resembling a lake in autumn, perfectly described by the ancient poem "Quiet shadows sink into the jade." His gaze seemed always filled with tenderness. When looking into his eyes, one would unconsciously feel embraced, without any sense of violation or hostility. This was a rare experience for her since arriving in this country. In the past, when men looked at her, they always had a kind of strange, hostile gaze. "What are you going to do in the capital?" she asked cautiously this time. "I work there. I'm using my vacation to return home for my cousin's wedding," he suddenly exclaimed, pointing at the sky outside the window. "Ah, the moon is out." The dark clouds in the night sky dispersed, revealing a crescent moon, its clear light illuminating the sky. A smile appeared on her lips. Yes, such beautiful moonlight. Those traveling at night, looking at it, always feel less lonely. I think I understand why Ludwig too always liked to travel at night. Their conversation continued until the early hours of the morning. They hit it off well, and she didn't ask about his identity again, guessing he might be a composer or a playwright, because his understanding of Wagner's works went beyond just the admiration of the builder of the Swan Castle. From his first work with a Shakespearean imprint, Libelt and Adelaide, to Tristan and the Ring of the Nibelung, and to the viewpoints in his theoretical work Art and Revolution. He was clearly energetic, getting more and more into the conversation. Teddy had already fallen asleep in its nest, snoring softly, and Kenyi was gradually feeling sleepy too. She covered her mouth and yawned. I think you should rest. He paused, glancing at his watch. My God! It's already 2 a.m. This train will arrive around 6 a.m. His tone was very sincere. I'm really sorry to have disturbed you for so long. If I could, I would prefer it to break down and take 2 days and nights, so I could spend more time with you. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.